Parasite is probably one of the best movies I've seen in a while. Hello, everybody. It's me. Let's talk about it. I went into this movie knowing nothing except for the fact that it won an Oscar. That was it. That was all I knew. And it was a South Korean made movie, and it was about poor people, and it was like everyone was praising it, right? That's all I knew. And I could tell from the title and kind of like the idea that maybe something was going to be said about like class and other things like that. And yep, it is all about that. It's about chaebols and South Korean culture. It's about the class disparities and the parasitic relationship of both the wealthy elite class and as well, in lesser terms, the poor, impoverished parts of the world leeching off of the elite above them, which I find incredibly interesting. I have a bunch of notes here. I remember going into this movie and like thinking like, oh, what's going to happen, right? Um, but a lot of it is very metaphorical. There is a crazy amount of stuff here. I remember I saw the stuff with Native Indians, the little kid about the Cub Scouts, and he's like going around with like tomahawks and shooting bows and arrows, and I was like, that can't just be like really weird cultural appropriation, right? That has to be like thematic, right? And yeah, it turns out to be incredibly thematic and symbolic of the fact that there's a very big idea with Native Americans having their culture reappropriated or being used or boiled down in very strange ways, such as into toys and so on, and like old Thanksgiving stuff, right? And so seeing that here leads me to believe that that is symbolic for the history behind that, and also how the elite of that century were leeching off of them and taking from them, right? And that is what we see here with the Parks and the other family, Jessica, Kevin, them, which I also found really interesting that they were given English names, and that really does kind of land the point home with like obsessions with foreign stuff, and also ties a little bit more into Korean culture as well. Because I don't know entirely a lot about Korean culture. That is a part that I'm still learning about a lot about. Um, but I do know um, enough to know, you know, um, there's a lot of stuff that just like really lands home that idea of those themes, right? And it even it almost feels like it's also trying to say stuff with um the Republic of North Korea and things like the DPRK or North Korea, um, right? Because there are blatant references to North Korea in these in this movie, right? And it does feel like it is trying to say something about that relationship, right? And how South Koreans are kind of just like taught to hate North Koreans due to like even the impoverished who are also experiencing horrible things at the hands of the elite, despite all the stuff that's being said about the North, right? They still hate them, despite having never met them, right? Never knowing anything about them except for what's being told to them. Um, and then it's also like a reflection of what was going on in South Korea itself, with how there's a huge impoverishment rate among so many people. Like we see that with the idea that the mother of the Parks, which I am forgetting all their names, like just mistreating the dad, right? And Mr. Yim, and we see that these characters, they go from really enjoying what they're doing, and I also really like how once the Parks leave for that camping trip, they start using their house more luxuriously, taking advantage of it and using it in a better capacity than we actually see the Parks use it in the movie. And I feel like that's also a symbolic thing as well that the movie is telling us and talking about and putting light on, of being like, see, these wealthy people, they have these things, but they don't appreciate it. But if you put it in the hands of these other people, they will appreciate it infinitely more than you appreciate it, right? Which, is a lesson on like appreciating what you have and so on, especially if you are privileged to have a lot. But back to the point of that we do just see that the real parasites are not this other family that we are led to believe are. Like, yes, they were being parasitic in the very beginning, but we're kind of just told, like, fuck these guys. Like, they do shit that kind of just feels weird and so on. And then, like, they kind of feel like they're both very ignorant, but are also just very, like, obtuse and, like, don't get anything about the world around them, right? So I thought that was very interesting to see in the movie. Let's see what else. I got notes. There's just a ton of really good stuff like that. And oh yeah, with the parasite really being the Park family in the end, they are just leeching and leeching from these guys, their labor from them, and like basically giving them nothing in return. Um, to the point to where we see in the end, spoilers if you don't want to get spoiled for a 5-year-old movie, that these guys end up, Mr. Yim kills Mr. Park because he just can't stand this revulsion against people of his class, right? We see Mrs. Park, excuse me, talking about how the rain was a blessing when the rain caused a storm that flooded the low income neighborhood and the basement that they were like living in, right? And we see like so much that they are really trying to scrape by, and that like it's again a political piece and talking piece about South Korean culture, that there is no infrastructure there. There is no infrastructure to ensure that they will have some sort of money to be able to survive. They have to fucking fold boxes while someone is in between jobs. And the only way that they can potentially move up in the world is just by lying. Much like, we see happening with, the elite. They like put on a face, they put on a facade to get what they want. And then that facade starts breaking down. We see that with the Parks. Yeah, and also the idea that there's this line, and that line isn't just professionality, right? At first I was like, oh, is it just not being professional? But why, if it's that, then why is it that the old maid was able to live with them for so long, basically live with them, but also they have this really strong bond with the son, right? There's just so much in this movie, man. Like it really is incredible. And these aren't reaches. These are things that I went and looked up interviews for. The director, I forget his name, Bong something. It's a shame that I can't remember it right now. But yeah, like he talks about that's the point. It is supposed to show class disparity in South Korea. It is also supposed to talk on other points as well in modern society and the system that they were under, and a critique of South Korea, and just putting all these ideas onto film and in a masterful piece of in cinematography, and as well as being a black humor and just being a thriller. It's awesome. Let's see. I don't know really where else to go. My mind is just like really all over the place. There is just so much tension in this movie. There really is. It feels so edge of your seat, right? Like usually in thrillers, I don't really buy tension because I'm like, oh, it'll be okay. Like there's still so much left of the runtime. But then there are these points like with the basement, or them being like alone and they're drinking and everything. I'm like, what if they walk in? What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to these poor guys? And speaking of the other family living as actual parasites, in the basement, you see this reverence for Mr. Park by the husband, who clearly has something going on, right? It's some sort of brain damage, some sort of neurodivergency or so on going on with him that he's almost like having this like psychosis, right, of Mr. Park and worshiping him and making him think that lights are automatic when they actually aren't, and it's him slamming his head into the wall. And I definitely think that he's not slamming his head because his hands are tied. That's just what he does anyway. Um, we see at another part where he does it so much that he bleeds, and he sends messages and everything. So yeah, clearly something's going on. Like he's even acting like animalistic at points, crawling up the stairs, like the way he eats this banana. Something has happened. He's just cracked while being under there. Let's. There's a lot of really funny not memes, scenes from the movie, such as where the maid kicks the woman down the stairs and then she. I was like, oh my god, she's dead. I just laughed out loud. That was so funny. I also thought that the idea of the son being like pedophilic in a way, well, yes, very blatantly so, being attracted to minors, um, and it's brought up in the movie, and it's not supposed to be something that you're like, oh yeah, root for. It's supposed to be something that you're frowned upon because and I looked it up afterwards because I wanted to make sure that in South Korean culture that big of an age gap is very much frowned upon. So it does really lend to the idea of moral grayness between the two families and the two classes, right? And I really enjoy that nuance because, like, man, yeah, fuck the Parks. They're horrible. Like, they are just scumbags, right? Not even directly, just taking advantage of these guys. Um, but then also the other family themselves are pretty vulgar, not in like language, but in like just the way that they talk about the Parks behind their backs, um, or then treat like their dog. I know that was one thing, like pushing away the dog. That was obviously meant there to be like to add another layer, but as well just like the kind of personalities of each of them, really isn't something entirely to root for. But I enjoyed it thoroughly throughout the entire time. Yeah, I'd be nice if I had all this money. I'd be nice too. Push his dog. I had a bunch of uh bunch of stuff here. Oh yeah, there's the thing of like we ordered it from the U.S. like the TP thing. Um, and I was like, well, what does that mean? How does that mean anything? Yeah, really metaphorical, like talking about the rock. And yeah, the entire thing is very metaphorical. Just so much stuff. I really wish that we got to see them go camping because I was watching. I was like, oh, they are for sure just going glamping. They're not actually going out. They're just going to they're basically just going to sit in a cabin with around nature and everything. Um, yeah, there's a lot of symbolism, with the pizza and the hot sauce, and then the hot sauce being used later for the TB um, framing, and then just the way that they scheme is so meticulous, and the scripting was awesome. Uh, yeah, and then like also they even mentioned like the smell. I thought that was really interesting. Oh, and there's a really nice part that I saw was where Mr. Park saw the core, like the business card, and he doesn't like put it away immediately. He actually like looks at it. And as a businessman, that is something that he would do because it is a very prominent thing that I learned about Japan, but also a lot of East Asian cultures is that like business cards are super fucking important. Like it is basically an attachment of yourself. It's like the way that you give it to them, and that you don't just put it away. You actually have to admire it. You have to actually like look at it, and then you have like special tin to put it in, which was a big thing back in the day with business cards, but has kind of moved away because business cards really aren't that big of a thing anymore when it comes to business ventures. I thought just like a lot of them were just the worst, right? I did really enjoy. I'm gonna say it again. I really did enjoy the scene of the parks, not the parks, um, the Yim family, miss perhaps. I don't know. I completely forget their last name or surname. That like they are in the house and they're drinking. I mean, yeah, they're making a mess, but like as they're there, like they're just soaking in the commodities. They're not. It's not just a part of their life. It's not just some mundane thing of being like, oh, here's the Voss glass bottle of water that I'm just going to take a sip out of. It's like no, it's like wow, this is some expensive ass shit. And yeah, over time, when you do have really lavish things at your disposal, they do kind of just become mundane. But again, you gotta be thankful for what you have and grateful for what you have. Oh yeah, there's also here's a few other notes. The Mr. Park was like messing with Oculuses in his like business meeting. I thought that was cool. I noticed that. Forbidden fruit in the middle of being fed by a minor was very on the nose. Unironically, a lot of them are very good at their jobs. Um, like yes, Jessica, the sister, is just shitting out of her mouth, right? Just absolutely like you know, making her mom, the mom of Da Sung, right? But the son, the young son, that it just makes her worry endlessly and break down crying. But then you see like she's like actually like kind of helping him and like pain, and like holding him. She's not just like there. And then obviously there's the relationship with the daughter and Kevin, and how is actually helping her, but then he's kind of a creep too. Um, you also see that the mom is also very good at being like a maid and cleaning up and cooking. Um, and then that was also a really big thing that was mentioned by Mr. Park was his disdain for his wife. Almost like that she's just a thing to him. And we see that again another point in the movie where despite being very reluctant and basically just saying no, they have a fondling session on the couch. Very tense moment, but really does just show you how Mr. Park thinks of his wife, and how wives are treated in that upper class of rich folk, especially in this scenario where they are just kind of a person that is married just to kind of be like an object, which is fucking disgusting. Um, oh, and then also Mr. Yim being great at driving cars. I thought he wasn't going to be good at driving cars, but then he was just like awesome. Yeah, there was just a lot of this disdain that I just made me sick. But yeah, overall, actual fucking amazing movie. Literally, it's so good. If you haven't seen it, it's on HBO Max. And if you don't want to support HBO, I mean, I have a subscription and I might as well use it. So you know where to go if you want to watch it any other way. But other than that, I rate this a solid like 9.5 out of 10, maybe a 10 out of 10 if I'm being really generous. And if I'm being like super conservative with it, like easily a hard 9. It's fantastic. You can watch analysis after analysis. You can rewatch, and it just gets better and better every time you rewatch it. So yes, definitely go check out Parasite. There is a dubbed version out there somewhere, but just watch the sub, read a little. Yeah, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. But yeah, other than that, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like down below. And while you're down there, let me know your thoughts on Parasite. Did you watch it? Did you enjoy it? What is your rating on it? What are your observations of it and your interpretation of everything that was happening? I didn't talk a lot about the ending, but and the ending is very vague, but kind of hopeful, but also just a stark reality of the situation of the late stage capitalism shit of just being unfeasible, unreasonable. I mean, the director even said that if he really wanted to buy the house, he would have to work for like 500 years. Even if he was moving up positions, it would take forever to fucking buy that house. And that is a tragedy. That means that he will never get to see his dad again, and his dad will just be living in that basement forever. But yeah, other than that, if you want to support me and keep me out of poverty, have a cash out down below. Thank you. If you send anything, leave a comment, and or a note on the Cash App donation, and I will make a shout out and everything about that. Other than that, thank you all so much for watching. As always, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.